Well, I guess I should close my Facebook. Hey.
Hi.
Hi, how are you?
I'm good.
We're trying a new format today. So I am here with the amazing Allison Crow. I was just going to ask you before we started. You used to have this awesome tagline on your website that was like, coach, intuitive, wild artist. So do you still have that tagline? Because I was using it to describe you, but I couldn't remember.
Oh, that's fun. No, that was from my old website before it crashed, but it was, we call it being a slasher because I'm an intuitive life and business coach. I'm a wild artist. I'm a teacher. Like I just have some wisdom to share. I'm a irreverent priestess. And so my tagline changes all the things all the time, but I'm also I'm just all the things. There's no such thing as niche.
Everything.
I'm everything. I'll be your everything.
Which is perfect. So thank you for joining. Allison was my coach for many years and has become a great friend. And because I am working on this intuitive entrepreneur program, I was like thinking of all of these people who are already embodying this. And you're absolutely one person who does that. So thank you for being here.
You're welcome. I realized too, as I was thinking about this today, sometimes I don't really give myself credit for what I've created as an intuitive, right? Like I'm always comparing myself to the business panties of traditional business people. Right. And I sat down and wrote a list of like, what does that really mean to be successful and still embodying that intuitiveness? So you gave me, just by asking me to be on this, just gave me a lot to think about and self-reflect. It's like, oh.
Yeah. So do you want to talk about that? Because one thing I noticed when you talk about your business, you always are kind of checking in with yourself, and you just spend a lot of time like really following your intuition to guide you, just not personally, but working through blocks. Like you had a great live stream yesterday where you talked about how you kind of woke up feeling really depressed, and you really checked in with yourself. Do you want to talk about that process and how you do that? Because you show that so clearly. And I feel like other people probably do that behind the scenes, but you really share that. And I love that you do that because that's given me permission to do that.
I realize it's so important. And so obviously in business, just like you, I started out sharing my skills and talents working for somebody else. And I got a lot of training and learning. And over time, like everything on the outside looked good. The money was fantastic. I was being promoted. And somehow I just kept bumping up against stuff. And there was one point when I left twice, but the second time I left, they were like, why would you leave this? And I was like, I'm not leaving you. I'm going towards me. And it was that original bumping up against like, this should make me happy. This should be fulfilling. But I began to start listening inside. And so if you had asked me 12 years ago if I was an introvert, I would have said no way. And I've just started listening. And I realize now that I am fully practiced. I realize how much I trusted myself in leaving, and everybody, including my sweet husband, thought I was nuts. Right. And I trusted myself. And then also, yesterday was the first day that I've woken up feeling depressed in almost a year. And I've struggled with depression my whole life, but it's really, I've done some other work to really release that. And it was just so strange. So it's like so easy to feel bad about it. And then I was just like, wait a minute, let's check in on what's really going on, what's really true for me, instead of reflecting off what society is telling me was going on. And so, yes, I've learned, that's the other thing, over time. So somewhere along the way, somebody taught me about that word trust. And there was a couple of years ago when I was sitting in my backyard, the one you've been in, and I was like, Allison, you can trust yourself. Can't you see that? Like, look at what you've done, that even though it's changed and you've shifted and 1,000 times, you can trust yourself. And it was almost like I finally, I stood up straight in my own being, like, I have all the resources inside of me. If I would quit listening and comparing and listen to myself, I have so much wisdom inside. But that's what it took. It took practice, learning, listening, and then experimenting, right? Listening and experimenting, listening and experiencing. And now I can honestly say I have proven evidence that, holy cow, this does work for me. And evidence of what does not work for me.
Yeah. And I love that. Like, I feel like that's almost the first step is stop listening to other people or what, society or general rules are. Cause your experience describing leaving real estate was very similar to mine leaving advertising, right? It was like, everything looks so good. I should be so grateful I'm making so much money. I should feel like I'm so successful because I keep rising up in terms of my job responsibilities and my title. It all looks so good on paper. Why do I hate it? Like, why am I so unhappy? And just trusting yourself to say, like, I don't have to love it because everyone else thinks I should. Right. And that's, I feel like that's such a great first step is to recognize that like what you feel is valid. Right. And just because somebody else thinks it's great doesn't mean you have to think it's great.
Well, and you said something at the beginning too. You said you slow down and check in. And sometimes I forget that. But when I very first shifted, so I got out of the real estate coaching world and was starting in the online world and was going from a very relationship-based business. And I kind of got sucked in the early days to all the early online formulas. And I came across Rich's book about Prosperous Coach. And what resonated for me in that book was the human relationships. And then one of the reasons I ended up hiring him is because something inside of me was saying, slow down. And that was one of the first things Rich said to me the first time I ever talked to him on the phone. And I just was like, oh, wait, this message, slow down, because we can't hear, we can't listen, we can't observe the sensations in our bodies when we're going so fast.
Yeah.
It's like the difference between driving through your neighborhood and then when you walk through your neighborhood, you notice so many more things in your own neighborhood. Yeah.
So true. And Dawn says, oh, I love that, going towards me, right? Because it is, you're like choosing a choice for you. And I so agree with that because I remember when I first hired you, which was probably like 4 or 5 years ago.
Yeah, it has to be. I think it was like 2012.
Yeah, but it was so funny because I was like, I don't even know who I am anymore because I was so crazy working corporate. I had 2 really little kids at that time. And I just remember I was like, I don't even know what I would do if I just stopped doing this. Like I was just, because I had no quiet time. I had no time to check in. There was nothing like that. And I felt so disconnected even from myself. But now I can see, like, because I wasn't taking any time to be quiet. It's like my whole world was crazy and I just let it be that way. But then finally I realized like, this has to change. This is not sustainable.
Right. Well, and I remember some of those early conversations with you. This is why, like, I really, even though I do business coaching, I really identify as a life coach. It took me a long time to do that, but I was talking to a past real estate client and, we talked about that the clients that were most successful, it wasn't a question of the business and how to, because we can Google that, we can download somebody's freebie, we can read a book and all those answers are there. It's actually about dealing with the life issues and the belief issues. And I remember one moment where I can't remember what you had to do, but you went into the women's stall in the restroom. And in our next call, you were like, oh my gosh, Allison, I just slowed down and I went inside and I listened. And then I immediately, I can't remember whether you I think you manifested $10,000. Yeah. But it was like you slowed down. You were like, hold on, let me go to the bathroom. And I just like, you took this space for you at a ladies' bathroom stall.
Yeah.
And just taking those 6 or 7 minutes in that stall shifted the trajectory when you came out and you were able to create something. And I remember you like, oh my gosh, I actually am really good at this. And so for I think a whole year of our coaching, I was just reminding you to use your intuition and your spiritual mojo and those practices, like slow down and listen. You'll know.
Yeah. And just to give people background, I was on my way to a meeting in downtown San Francisco. It's so busy. I'm like, shit, I have to go. Oh, I was doing an interview and it was really important with the CEO. And I was like, I haven't prepared at all for this. I have no idea what I'm going to say. And I was like, where can I even go? And I walked by this hotel and I was like, I'm just going to go see if I can find a space in there. And then the lobby was totally packed because this is a hotel. Like I knew this hotel. I had like been in there before and I was like, oh, I could find a quiet space, but it was totally packed. So then I went in the bathroom and no one was in the bathroom. And they have these really luxurious bathrooms and these giant stalls that had like a full door. So you had a mini room for yourself. And I was like,
office.
yeah, I was like, I'm just going to sit here for like 5 minutes and like ground myself and focus and then go. And it was great. I was so on it, like the whole interview. I think I did like get more money from them too, because they ended up hiring me. But yeah, that was what happened. But you said something else, that you see yourself as a business coach, but you're a life coach. But I would say you can't do one without the other.
Well, exactly.
Right?
Exactly.
You can't. And that's why I always see you as my original coach, even though I've worked with so many other people. What really had to shift was me inside. And if I hadn't done any of the work with you, I could never have done anything else. Right. Like that was the core. So I think to be a business coach and be successful, like, yeah, there are all these online gurus, but what I see that's missing from these people is that none of them talk about how to do the inner work on yourself. And if you don't do that, all of those techniques don't matter.
Well, and
it's not important.
Nobody was talking. I was thinking today, I opened up my Danielle Laporte Desire Planner. I love this planner because I use it more like a journal, like a planner. And the question says, who in your life now do you really admire? And one of the things I feel like I've been lacking, and I probably haven't looked real hard, but used to, it'd be so obvious. I'm really having a hard time finding somebody I look up to, in the sense that somebody has gone where I would like to go, that is 45 or older, that is in a, not at the beginning, that's married, that is working on the second or third phase of their marriage, that's reinvented their business over and over and again to shift with the varying markets, that also has really great shiny moments, but that also deals with the humanness, because those are the things that came up this week, like stuff going on in my marriage and depression hitting. And sometimes I feel so insecure about sharing those things, but I'm like, by God, every single one of these men and women that I work with is home, and all they're seeing is the pretty shiny Facebook ad. And how do we have a whole life? And the business is only a slice of that pie. And I know when I'm aligned, when I am feeling good about my life and my thought process and my spiritual practices, and when I'm feeling good and balanced, my business is so much more effortless and so much more successful, and I'm so much more attractive. And so, but I do want to give permission, like I realized that little Facebook tool, the memories, and I see all the first weekend of November, and I realize that my natural cycles, I'm generally the first week of November, I'm actually pretty melancholy. It's interesting. Right? Like, how when you look at a P&L over time, especially if you have inconsistent income, and you might see your patterns where these months are the months where I really shine and do well. Right. And these months, and I was like, oh, this is like, every November, I have a little bit of a shadowy weekend, and maybe it's a ride, instead of beating myself up, going, oh, this is actually one of the things that strengthens my intuition, is to go to the dark side of the moon, to go into the shadow, to go into the cave. And so I've started sharing pieces. It's still very uncomfortable because I'm insecure at times, but like, we need to see not only the good and the success and the happy, but we need to see how do my leaders handle the shadow times. Yeah,
because that is so important, because that is the reality of anyone who works for themselves, anyone who's an entrepreneur, a solopreneur. I feel like really anyone who works, but especially if you're an entrepreneur, because you're kind of doing a lot of it on your own. Oh, hey, Muddy. If you don't know how to get through that hard time, you don't see a good model, then how could you ever, or if someone doesn't even acknowledge that, even worse, that's hard, and says, entrepreneurship's easy. Like, I'm going to help you create a multi-million-dollar business and it's all going to be effortless. It's like, that is the biggest load of crap ever.
Right.
Because
intuitives and introverts are often very sensitive. We're not just sensitive with our own stuff. We're sensitive to the things that are going on in the world. We're sensitive to the conversations that, like, I had to do a lot of clearing and a lot of energetic processing. And someone last night was like, I don't watch the news. Well, I do watch the news. I have a part of me that really wants to be educated and informed, but I have to manage that information. I have to manage the information I see. There's a mental and psychological process going on. And so Stacey Nelson and I were laughing the other day. I was like, remember the days when we were unaware? And the more aware you become, the more you open your energetic and your intuitive and your introverted sensitivities, you trust yourself more. But the reality is there's so much more shit to contend with. I don't know if that's making sense. It's like,
it is. So we had that conversation yesterday where you were saying you were feeling so much more sensitive. And I was like, yeah, me too. And part of it is, and that's part of being, I think, an introvert, because I think all introverts are empaths.
Yeah.
I think you're probably an introvert because you're an empath, right? And an empath just means you take in all of these feelings and you kind of feel the vibration or the energy or, the feelings from other people, whatever that is. Yeah. And then once you start really accepting that, I think, it kind of opens you up and then you feel a lot more. So do you want to talk about how you manage that?
Yeah. I mean, so step number one is really just first acknowledging that I would say, in the same way, if you got a headache, if you had a headache right now and it was a blaring headache, where do you get it in your head? Like when you get a headache, where does it hurt in your head? Does it hurt in the front? Does it hurt behind the eyes? Does it hurt back here? And then the second thing would be, your symptoms, right? Because your symptoms are different from mine. Where I get headaches is different from you. So noticing your unique symptoms. And then what is your specific soul medicine, right? So some people may take Excedrin. Some people may go in a dark room and close their eyes. Somebody may drink a glass of water. I'll take 3 Advil, right? We each have a unique medicine too. So as we begin to know ourselves and slow down and listen within, we start to recognize our symptoms and we know our medicines. So one of my medicines is getting my thoughts out of my head. So writing. And it was so funny. I didn't realize this until afterwards, but I was so pent up for about 48 hours. And yesterday morning, it was really thick and heavy. And as soon as I got online and kind of did that precursor to this one, but I also talked about God, today was really hard. I got off that and it wasn't hard anymore. Get it out of your system. Talk with somebody about it. But shame keeps us from saying anything. And so the other, obviously, personal and self-care. Am I walking? Am I eating well? Am I resting enough? And the other thing is, as I listened and I reflected back with a girlfriend this weekend, I have made an appointment for a full-on bioidentical hormone doctor that scans everything, not just one of these quickie one-stop hormone replacement shops, not traditional medicine. They're going to scan all my blood and all my saliva and my thyroid, making sure, is this a physical thing? Because I'm in perimenopause, so I'm even more sensitive. And some sensitivities are high up, and then other sensitivities, like my testosterone, is probably totally gone. And so really making the most important thing, knowing myself without a diagnosis or without making some horrible meaning. And then once I know the situation, I know how to ease into my work, my coaching sessions, what I want to create. And then I know how to manage energy instead of time. Because I don't think introverts and intuitives do well in a machine system. We need some systems, but we need to be able to erase and replace or change. We need to be able to have kind of a fluid, not totally open. I call it Jello jigglers, right? We don't need it to be set. We don't need it to be set in stone cement systems and structures and schedules, but we also don't need it to be like water that goes, that's not there. We need to be able to have it soft and malleable. And if we need to, say, okay, I'm not going to record my podcast on Sunday because I'm having a really important marital discussion with my husband, I'm going to pick that up and move it to a place where it's more conducive to my energy being ready for it, instead of forcing myself to meet that commitment.
Right. Yeah. And I love, I was just going to say, I just put up Muddy's comment. He said, the more aware you become, the more tuned in you become to frequencies of others and the stuff around us, which I think is very, very true.
It's a lot of processes going through our heads. Give us some credit. And so that's the other thing I realized today. I was like, oh my gosh, I take myself so seriously sometimes, and I need to just go have some pleasure and have some fun and play and spend some girlfriend time, not being the coach and not being, I told my buddy coach this morning, I was like, quit. I want you to tell everybody in your life you are not solving any problems from now until the end of the year, because she's, naturally one of these resourceful and helpful people, but then she starts feeling depleted.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think a lot of us do that because we're heart-centered, we're giving our gifts, it feels good, but then all of a sudden we look up and we don't have the capacity to complete something in our business or follow through with our own clients. And it is tricky to maneuver all these pieces, and they're not going to go away. So we've got to learn how to be, shifting while we're going, which is perfect, because I don't think people who aren't tapped into their intuition can do it. And we can.
Yeah. And that's what I was going to say. Being an entrepreneur is such a great job if you're someone who's very intuitive or empathic, because you have a little bit more control. And it's funny because I don't think I could have a corporate job, even if I wanted one. I don't think I could take in all of that, or I just think I would be so miserable. So yeah, it's interesting because I think that now I've shifted and I take in even more now that I would not even be able to be in that kind of environment.
Right.
Yeah, but that is why it's such a great job, because you can have that control and you can go with your, whatever the flow is that you're in at that moment, which some people, like to do things in sprints. That's kind of how I am.
Right.
And some people like to just kind of like pace it out, but you have that ability to do it however you want.
Yeah.
Oh, hi, Michelle.
Exactly.
Yeah. So do you want to talk a little bit about what we chatted about briefly yesterday about the coaching industry? Because I thought that was really interesting. So
fascinating.
So one of the things that's happening right now, and I always say it's like digital marketing, but there's a lot of online experts out there. Some of them are really wonderful and have great businesses. Some of them are a little bit more like, I don't know, how do you describe, like more focused on the money, I would say. I didn't want to say sleazy, but I think they're a little bit more about the money. I am personally attracted to the online business model because as an introvert, it helps me manage my energy. I know you do great at events and I would love to work up to that at some point, but right now I think that's too draining for me. I do online events, which is very fun for me because I love connecting with people. But there has been this big shift in the industry of online coaching and online, I would say, teaching models and online marketing models where, people who are successful, maybe 4 or 5 years ago, would you say, maybe even longer than that?
Yeah. I mean, there's this whole, it's interesting because obviously the online world was before I came in, and I remember learning certain online ways of working from one mentor. And then I see these people that end up creating entire systems, and they do this, that word launch is a noun. It's not a verb. It's a launch, and it's a way of doing business. And for a lot of people, there's a systematic step, and it was creating massive amounts of money for a lot of coaches. But this is what's fascinating to me. A lot of them I don't think are coaches. They're teachers and they're giving information. But what you and I do on the phone, what I do with my clients is very different from creating online videos. And I think there's a value of information, but to me, it's hard for me to call them coaches, but a lot of them call them coaches, and they're teaching business principles and they're doing all these things, and they're making 250 to $1 million, $1.2 million in each launch.
Oh, yeah, and some of them way more than that. Yeah, the successful people are making $10 million a year, and just from teaching online, which is great. I mean, some of them are teaching something very valuable, but there's this kind of like a method, right? It's like they're all following the same principles, and that's what confuses me too, because I'm like, is anyone having original thoughts here? Because that's what I always I'm always the person who wants to do things better and different my way, just because I'm a rebel and I rebel against anything that anyone tells me to do. But they all seem to be saying this is the way you do it. You have to do it this way. You have to have a Facebook ad. You have to spend money on your Facebook ads, and then you have to build this huge email list. And the bigger the email list, and then you sell your product, and then you get joint venture partners to promote it for you, and then you split it, and then you have to promote for them. And so it's like this kind of system of doing business. But long story short, this business model is not working anymore, right? So we've heard this over the last 2 years, that everyone who's following this model that's proven, right, are really struggling. And I thought you had such a good point yesterday because you were talking about a very big name that has decided they're not working in the industry because they're not making money. And you were like, so you're only doing this for the money then, just
right,
to be clear.
I don't want to out anybody. The only person I'm willing to talk about, and this was a couple years ago. So before I get to this big person that's dropping out, I really admired. I remember when Kimra Luna came on the scene, and she's so young, and she, she learned how to do this, and she took her family from welfare and poverty to $1 million business and multi-million-dollar business. And she was a mom of little kids. And I remember about 2 years in, I was watching her, and it was a little too fast and millennial for me. So the vibration of it was hard for me, but I was watching her because she was smart. And sure enough, she was doing that model. And I remember someone tagged me because at some point I had cleaned up my feed. So I wasn't seeing a lot of, I call it staccato. That energy comes across, and it's very like a dagger to me. And someone tagged me in a video she did, and she talked about how the last launch she did caused her so much panic and anxiety. And she was one of the few, she was so vulnerable about how sensitive she was. And I don't know what she's done with her business, but I just remember watching that and just crying because I was so glad that somebody was talking about how energetically challenging that is, especially when you're selling your service. Because when you're selling your service versus selling this blue rock, right? Or your art, the thing that you're personally connected to versus something that can be produced in China. I think us intuitives, where our heart is literally attached. And so that was, and seeing her pull back from that, I was like, see, this is not a healthy thing. And then I watched a couple of my friends who are multi-million-dollar coaches calling me saying, I'm done. I can't do another launch. And then this year I had my own, it's like, I've taught one class that I've launched. And the first year I had made a whole lot of money. The second year I had made a whole lot of money. And this is an amazing program. And this year when I did it in May, I had 4 people sign up. So I had this own experience of like, my launch failed. Complete 4. I can't run a class with 4 people. And I was already thinking of doing something different, not really knowing why, but wanting to switch my prices from very high. Sorry, because you're one of the people that paid a lot of the high prices, right? But I was tired of spending. Well, thank you. And I was tired of, like you and I have both spent thousands and thousands of dollars, and you spend $3,000 on this course and $25,000 on this coaching, and you realize they're all telling you the same damn thing. And where's this inner stuff? So then fast forward, not only are my friends having this experience and they're feeling insecure about it, and they are starting to tell me about how their mentors are dropping like flies. And this article comes out with, I think her name was Hillary Weiss on Medium. And then there was a second article, and I can't remember the gal's name who wrote it, but these are people big in the industry. Hillary is a copywriter for a lot of these people. Oh, right. And so she was on the back end, where the teams are talking, because you guys that are audience members, you don't normally see the head person talking with all their staff and going, holy shit, we're used to making this, and we just spent $250,000 on ads, and we're not making anything near the profit. And she's been seeing this go on for a couple years. And the second article was about the access economy instead of this big gatekeeper economy, where it's all about how much money you spend and you get access. That's the only level at which those people were actually more in personal relationships with their clients. And so I'm seeing this, and it's kind of giving me this validation, because I'm like, really? This person that supposedly was one of the grandfathers, although he's very young, one of the grandfathers of this industry, and I don't know the whole story. Right. So I don't know if there's other factors. I don't know I have no idea. But the fact that he's leaving because, quote, the launches aren't making what they used to, I just was like, okay, I mean, I understand that, but I learned in real estate, when the real estate market shifts, you learn how to shift. And for me, why why am I doing this? Am I doing this because someone said, hey, here's a great way to make money? You know, did I Google search 10 great ways to make money from home? Or am I, and this is key here, this is the key, what I found to heart-centered success. I can't speak to checkbook success, massive numbers, scalability. But heart-centered financial and work success is doing that thing which you cannot do. You can't not do it. That's what I mean. And I use the double negatives on purpose. And so obviously this person can step out of this world.
Right. Right. Well, and I just want to say you are, I would say, in the top 5% of what all coaches earn. I mean, I wouldn't discount what you're doing.
No,
I mean, you are, and you've been doing consistently for almost 10 years.
12.
So, right?
12 years.
Yeah. So you've been consistently making over 6 figures in a coaching business, which is very rare because I mean, the reality is there's a very, very small amount who are making very high, like multi-million, but they're doing more than just coaching. And what you're doing, you've been doing consistently. And I think that is very rare in the industry to be able to do that and then not be burned out and still enjoy it and love it and be serving people.
So I just think it's interesting, you know, how do we shift in the market? I think the question I pose, what's more, you know, money is important. I love money. I've also shifted my lifestyle so that I don't have to make $30,000 a month. You know, I changed it so that I could rest a little bit more. I don't want to quit. Doing nothing is troublesome for me. I feel most alive when I'm on a coaching session. When I am right now, it's these Zoom rooms and 2 days ago, you know, it's 15 women on this Zoom and we're having various discussions and I'm feeling the energy and I'm touching and I'm feeling their hearts and I'm getting them to remember who they are. I feel so alive. And for me, what I witness in heart-centered entrepreneurs, in intuitives, in people who are giving their services before a product, because there's nothing wrong with a product. We actually, even though we are introverted, we still want connection.
Of course,
and we still want community. We don't want to we like our alone time. We love the safety, energetic safety from being connected behind the computer. And then by the time we do meet in person, all the chit chat is gone. And it is a different model. I watched some of the people in one of the ClickFunnels guy. I think that ClickFunnels guy, I love that book, right? You showed me.
It's a great book.
The book. And I watched some of these people and they have these things called the 6-figure, you know, the 6 comma club, the 3 comma, however many comma clubs for whether you got a million or whatever. But here's the thing. So there's a lot of coaches and heart-centered, intuitive people doing those kind of business. But the ones that I see that are able to sustain that and do that well aren't actually selling their services. They have a product and it may not be in the personal growth. Like somebody is selling, I don't know, keychains or you know, those are the ones who they're not emotionally attached to their product and they're able to scale a business because their heart, they're using, and whatever they use their money for, that's where their heart is, right? Where we are, our heart is in the everyday of our business. I don't know if I'm making it, you know, those machines work because they're providing a lifestyle. And so they'll work the machine to provide the lifestyle. And then they spend their energy in that lifestyle, I guess. We don't wait till the end product to bring our heart in.
Right. And I think that is probably the reason why these methods are not working anymore. Number one, the market's saturating and like there's only so many people who can follow the exact same method and be successful. But nobody there's not a hard
click. Yeah, nobody wants to click a thing that says, "Oh, funnel," right?
Make 6 figures from sitting in your bathrobe.
We're smart.
Well, people are smart, but also their heart isn't in it. There's no connection. There's no personal connection. And they're told like to tell their story and how it was a struggle. And now that they're successful, I just saw someone do this exact webinar and it was very, very well executed tactically. Like she hit all the points that she was supposed to hit.
Yeah. You can feel a mile away.
Yeah, you can see it, but I could just feel like her heart was not there. It just felt very shallow.
Right.
And I think that there is this like awakening going on of women, like this divine awakening, which I think is very feminine focused, and people are recognizing this, and they're seeing, like, they're able to intuitively feel like, this person's heart, this is just like, this is very shallow, and I don't feel this in my heart.
Right.
And I think that's the biggest difference that I'm seeing. I mean, you're seeing that too, right?
Yeah. And it's funny because I haven't really, diagnosed it or put words into it until recently. I smelled it before it came. I smelled the aroma before it came in. And it's interesting because it's always like in the last 2 years, things like that have just felt putrid, and I begin to hide them and I begin to put them away. And I've changed the way that I work in coaching, and I just notice what I respond to with an open heart and what causes me to shut down. Therefore, I know what my clients, so that's the thing. Those are valid business models. I don't want to make them wrong. They are just so not right for me and you, and really our clients. And that's the other aspect about this whole everybody being an entrepreneur is relatively new. I mean, yes, people have had small businesses, but like even my husband, who's just 10 years older than me, so he's kind of mentally and mindset wise on the tail end of his parents, and I'm on the early end of the millennials below me. And so we have this interesting chasm, and sometimes he's like, I just can't believe you. How do you make money doing that? Like, it doesn't compute, right? But then there's this wave of all of us that are able to make money doing things we love and sharing information and exchanging money and services. And that's, working for ourselves instead of having to go. That's relatively new. Our parents' generation wasn't doing that. If they were doing they were owning their own brick and mortar small business.
Oh yeah, when I was growing up in high school, wanting to be an entrepreneur, that the standard thought behind it, because that was before the internet, before smartphones, it was that you need several $100,000 in cash, 2 years of operating expenses. That's what I was taught, to be able to even start your business, because you could never expect to make a profit before year 3. And that was just what I was taught. So I was always like, what the fuck? How am I supposed to get $200,000? Like, and all the successful people that were written up in magazines were like, former investment banker. You're like, oh, fuck you. And then I sold my home, and I was like, I cannot even get a home, because if I could get a home, then I would have enough money like to do this in the first place. So I knew, I was like, but part of me knew, I was like, there is another way, and I do not subscribe to that. I know. And then, lo and behold, the internet is like born. And then by the time I'm out of college, and then some, really, you could start a business like with $100 and make money instantly. But that is such a new thing, right?
Well, that's why I think it's so important about what you're doing and the way that I'm working, but like what you're doing with this intuitive entrepreneur course. And you and I have talked about you eventually opening up a membership place for people, because what we see in the market is the traditional masculine driven, linear driven way of working. And those of us, both men and women, that are intuitive, sensitive, introverted, we are so in tune with that. We're organic and we have cycles. We don't do 7 days a week at the same time. Like, we've got to have a little bit more wiggle room and creativity. We've got to have a lot of rest. We've got to figure out how to, I always laugh here in Austin. I've started networking again, like just real gently, and everybody wants to take me to lunch or go to lunch or coffee. And
interesting.
That's a 3-hour ordeal for me.
Right.
And I don't give those 3 hours to people, past clients, mom and besties. And otherwise, let's have a virtual meeting.
Right.
Energy and time. Those are valuable resources to me. And so it's been strange, but I'm remembering, these are the traditional ways. So what I'm saying about like your course, we are now, people like you and I are doing this stuff. And then when somebody says, hey, how is it that you work with people? Then we're looking back and mapping it out. I didn't realize, I don't know where it is, but I didn't realize that I was actually working in a system with clients. I don't know if it's here, but my sacred seed symbols. I didn't realize that I was actually had a system until I'd been working for 11 years, and a branding person says, well, what is it that you do with your clients? And all of a sudden there was the symbol of the sacred seed of life, just sacred geometry. And I started writing down, like, it's almost like you were in 5th grade when you had to write the outline from a encyclopedia. And so I just started thinking about what are the high points. And I was like, I didn't start with a formula. I still don't have a formula, but I do have these 6 key things that all my clients seem to go through. And so Christine, we're on the leading edge of developing these pathways for people like you and I, that there are so many of, to actually work and succeed without having to follow the 6 system blueprint, because that shit don't work for us. We can't even finish the class because some of us are too ADD, or it's too much information and we need a break, or whatever it is. And so we need to learn. And this is what I love. I know I'm just talking. I get really excited, and clearly I'm in just a zone of complete joy, and I love the mystery of it. And if that's the other thing I give to your viewers, oh, dear sweet one, please trust the mystery of the journey you're on, and remember that you're resilient, that you do have Google to find out how to. I guarantee the answer is on YouTube for free. And, let's just keep we experiment and then we adjust, and we experiment and we adjust, and we experiment and we adjust, and giving ourselves permission as quiet leaders and intuitive leaders and sensitive leaders and introverted leaders to take a step and then adjust, and take a step and adjust. That works for us because we don't trap ourselves in something that's, I told a client the other day, I said, hey, you realize if you start this, you can change your mind at any time. The program I started, part of my mind was like, well, what if it doesn't work? Well, let's say by the end of December, I'm not happy doing it. If I wanted to, I could just announce to y'all that it's over. Right. I'm not stuck with it forever, which gives me excitement about being there. So I just, we need, as introverts, as intuitives, we need a place to learn how to be in the world, in business, in our services, in our energies, cope with not just the business part, but how do we deal when we're waking up with depression, or we're feeling the energies of another shooting, or the energies of politics, or whatever it is. We need a place to hold hands and not have to go do it down at the networking meeting in person, because that's going to,
Right. Absolutely. And I love what you said about the journey, because I know for so many years I was like searching for like this answer, but I didn't even know what the question was. I just knew I was like searching, and it finally something clicked. And I think it was when I was working with you, and I was like, oh, well, the answer to the question is that, like, I'm asking the wrong question. And it's like the journey was kind of like the answer to the question. It was like, there is no end to this. It's the whole process. That's the experience. And it's kind of hard to verbalize, but in my mind, I was like, oh, okay, now I'm like, I can stop searching. And I just want to acknowledge some of these comments, these great comments. Some people wrote, Michelle saying, don't shut your program down.
I'm not shutting it down. I love it. I'm really happy with it.
Oh, Christina, thank you for your comments. Yeah, she said this is an inner revolution. I think that's true. Yeah, startups are brilliant, but the challenge of self-sustainability. Yeah, very true.
You know what I said? I realized just listening to you, and one of the reasons I never realized it until just this moment. I mean, I've realized I'm not really a goal-oriented person. I'm not like 5 years out, this is what I want my life to be. And I've always been told that I should have that and be working towards that. And as an intuitive, one of the things I love about my best friend, she's the same way too. And a lot of times we're like, hey, can I make the decision on the fly? And we don't obligate each other, but it's like, yeah, let's text Saturday morning and see where we both are. And if we're not in alignment, nobody's going to feel guilty, right? So it's perfect. And I think that's the thing. We are constantly sensing our current environment and adapting to it. And to think about an environment this far ahead is really overwhelming, and it starts to shut minds. So the questions haven't become, what's my vision or my mission? I don't fucking know. You know what my heart is today is to love on somebody. I do want to create income for my family. I want to find a way to do my work. And I call it, what can I create in the next season? And give myself seasons of business instead of.
I like that. That's a good way to think of it.
Instead of, it's like you're shifting from, you had soulful selling and you did your soulful selling. And then all of a sudden you realize, wait a minute, quiet selling feels a little bit better. Right. And intuitive entrepreneur. And all of a sudden you realize like the molecules are they're always moving in life. And you've given yourself, I know in the corporate world, they talk about being agile.
Right.
But we're being, oh, I love this. Okay. So talk about feminine, right? Like the universal energies, our clients' energies are our dance partner. And when you're dancing with a lead that's really skilled, they can barely tap your back or your shoulder and you know which way to go. Right. And I feel like that's what us intuitives are doing is we're dancing with the lead of the things that we're sensing, which is very different from having the end product in mind. So for us, the end is actually that to feel list becomes more important than the to-do list.
Yeah, absolutely.
All and I just want
to acknowledge, Christina said there's a lot of great talented people who are not charging exuberant fees and they're making a great difference in people's lives. I think that's true, but I also want to recognize there are people who are charging really high fees and they're still providing a lot of value. And what I think is most important, and I'll share something that I don't usually share on my page, but I think it's all about the intention. And I saw this recently. I did a past life regression recently, and I saw this really interesting time in my past where I had really incredible, intuitive, magical gifts. Right. But I was all about the money. And what I saw was that when I died, I felt incredibly guilty and shameful about that. And I did help a lot of people, but what I saw was very clearly, it's all about the intention. You can, I would have been fine if I had done it because I wanted to heal people and to help people, but I didn't. I was like always thinking about the money. And so my lesson but I also saw the reason I went through that is because I'm not going to ever do that again. And that as long as I always focus on my intention and to heal people and to help them, because I do feel like the work that I do, even though it's very business focused, it's very much about healing.
Absolutely.
And I feel like you do need to heal yourself to heal and to grow your business, because if you don't do that inner work we were talking about, and you don't work on yourself, it's really hard to get past like the money blocks and like having that pure intention around charging, high rates or low rates. It's, but like you're saying, you can allow whatever you're feeling like to come through. Right. If you're feeling like I want to serve more people with a membership site and have slightly lower rates
or ridiculously lower rates.
Right. Then that's great. And it's all relative, right? Because what's ridiculously low for one person
it's
might
still
be really
very expensive.
Stretch. Yeah. For somebody else. For somebody, they're like, oh my gosh, that's so dirt cheap. Like that seems like a no brainer for me.
Right.
But yeah, it was really interesting seeing that part of my past, and that I was like, okay, that's a really interesting story to see that and to see that like, even though there was incredible good, the intention was off.
Right.
And so that was like a great lesson for me and a great reminder with everything that, it is about like your intention moving forwards, because like we know, and it's funny, I teach this in my class. I say there are coaches who charge $100,000 upfront. You fly to them. You do everything, and people say it's worth every penny. And then you can also Google, life coach on Google and find someone who's like $30 an hour.
Right.
And it's really, what allows you to do that is having that intention and, also I think having, a certain confidence around it too.
Right. Well, and part of that, right? Like, so when you talk about your soul's purpose this time, right? And what is some of our soul's purposes is like, some of our soul's purposes is to actually release this idea that we don't have value and worth, and learning, pricing is one of the most spiritual, powerful conversations I have. It's not just functional. There is a functional mathematical way to do it, but the conversations and the things when you talk about pricing with a client, how deep their pains go. Like you said, this is really healing, spiritual, emotional, personal development work in putting. I talked with a gal yesterday that she's got a hobby that she wants to turn into a business, and she hasn't had paid clients yet. And that's really right. And but what's so beautiful is it's not just a here's how to. She's got to do the healing work to shift into that structure. That structure of the business is actually part of the healing for her. It's not just a system. And so it's just so fascinating to pay attention to it. That's why I say it's that thing that you can't not do. And And the reason Raphael put it that way, my shaman that passed away a couple years ago, when I was first doing women's circles, he was like, this is not going to be sold through a marketing page. And you have joined 2 of those programs, and you're like, I just know I have to be in it. And that's us going, I just know I have to create this. I just know I have to do this. I just know. Well, people are like, well, how did you think? How do you decide? I just knew more than I knew anything else. And so, I didn't know how. Well, how did you figure it out? I thought, well, if I did know how, what would I do? And the first time I did an event, I was like, well, I told the woman I said, I've never done an event before. I've never worked with the person behind the scenes. I may have gotten screwed over financially, but she was like, okay, great. I'll walk you through it. You know, and following, like you said, those intentions and being in alignment, your embodiment. So the outer business, the outer things you're doing and being for your clients and for yourself is in alignment with that intention. Right. Exactly. Yeah. Right. I think that's absolutely true. And it's so interesting to see. Oh, thank you for these comments. Oh, I love that everyone. Yeah. Thank you, Michelle. Yeah, good karma. Focusing on intention. Yes, we can absolutely focus on the intention. And that's what I always tell people, like before you're going to have a discussion about, like you were saying, pricing, it's just grounding yourself and having like gratitude that you even can have the conversation, right? And so many people get really nervous or worried about like having the sales conversation or finally saying their price if they're a coach, and that maybe it's too high or it's like it feels uncomfortable, but just, having that, gratitude and grounding before you have that conversation, and knowing that you're, coming from a place of service instead of, oh, this is going to be money to buy, a new dress or whatever. Right. Which I don't think anyone watching this is like, having that is in that situation, but we still feel guilty about it. I think our people, this is what's different from selling the little blue rock, right? We're not emotionally invested in the little blue rock or the can opener or even the t-shirt with our design on it or whatever. But when this is your baby, when this is your, especially when you're having conversations, right? Like this is your skill, your heart is so attached to it. We are afraid of rejection. And we've made up somewhere along the way that somebody's saying no or judging us as too expensive, too cheap. Right now, I'm worried that people are going to think I'm too cheap and therefore not valuable. And that was my biggest, and I'm like, that is not for me to convince the market. That is for me to think about my intention on my that's my inner work to do. And so because we're connected, of course we're going to take it. I remember someone said, you take business so personally. And I said, it is personal. Yeah, it is. And I don't it should be. I don't ever want it to not be. And that means, going back to what we talked about, we have to manage the different particles, the different symptoms, the different conditions. We have got to get really, really good, even better than some of these fully leveraged, fully funded, these scaled businesses that are just cranking out their machine. We have got to be exquisite with our thought management. We have got to remember who we are. Otherwise, because we will battle and we can't shove it down. We can't suppress all those insecurities and bring it out in bravado. That's not how we roll. So we feel them and then they stop us, and we need to learn to soothe the thoughts and the insecurities and the fears of rejection. And we need to practice the things that help us build confidence. Right. And so, and that's unique to intuitive and introverted entrepreneurs and anybody who's sensitive.
Yeah. And I would say if you could remember one thing, thank you, dear Jeff, for saying that, it's just remembering who you are. Yeah. I mean, that really sums it up. Just knowing, to trust yourself and to love yourself enough that you can remember that, because that is, that really changes everything. Right.
Right.
Yeah, it's interesting. I want to tell you guys really quickly about the Intuitive Entrepreneur Program that I'm running, and you can find out about it on soulfulselling.com. But it is a 1-year program for intuitive entrepreneurs. So it's a program I wish I had. It's, talking about doing that inner work and combining it with the business systems. So I'm putting together a webinar now because I've learned so many different business models, and they're not right. Like, one isn't right for every person, right? Some people love doing live events. I personally, it's not my thing. Some people want to run all their business online. Some people want it to be all one-on-one. And it's like, you have to work for your strengths and what you do best. Not do something because it's scary. Because I know for me, I could be doing events. I'm just not ready.
It's okay to not be ready.
Right. So it's something that I'm working on. But it's really a program to, guide you through the process with 8 people. So it's for 8 specific women. If it sounds like something that's inspiring to you, you can apply on my homepage. But it's really, I just changed the tagline because I realized it's a lot about healing. It's really, you have to heal yourself to grow your business. And I really, really believe that. And so much of us need healing around whether it's issues about money or issues about serving people or issues about our own kind of self-worth, I think are so core. Because once I started teaching selling, I realized it's not really selling, right? It like goes so much deeper than that. And like, if you were to unpeel the onion, like all the way down to the core, to be successful in selling, you have to love and trust yourself. But to get to that point is not, you don't get to that point immediately.
No.
And you never stop doing it.
Right? Yeah.
You never stop that work. It's never like immediate that you are like, suddenly I love myself 100%, right? It's always an ongoing process.
It's a spiral. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's it. That's the program. You can find out more about it on the website, but it's only for 8 women. So it's a very small program, and it's starting at the end of December. So it's coming up soon. But I'm super excited about it. I'll tell you, I went back and forth for so long with the program, knowing that I wanted to do it, but being very scared. And finally, I realized it's really necessary for me to put it out in the world, because I did release it right. It was actually last year at this time, but it was right after the election. And I was so devastated by everything that happened, and just also so surprised that I was like, this is not, like, I need to mentally refocus on what's happening, just because it was such a shock. And I think for so many people it was, and regardless of how you feel about the outcome, I think a lot of people, it just shifted everything.
I think there was I saw a lot of businesses stall out, because I believe there were a lot of people, not just in America, but globally, because England had also had their Brexit vote too. And these were both votes that nobody saw coming. And there was a general atmosphere of stun for at least 6 to 7 months after that.
Yeah, totally.
And people weren't spending money. I remember talking to people, and they're like, this is the hardest event I've ever sold. And they'd always sold out. I had one mentor that had a waiting list for years for this one event. And she's like, I've sold 2 spots. Like, people weren't, they were in fight or flight. And they were
right, exactly, which was a normal response. Regardless of how you felt, it was an upset, right? It was like a black swan event that I guess some people did experience. You used to always say your husband like totally knew, but I was like very surprised, especially being in California, where like everyone's kind of like on the same kind of, not everybody, but people are generally thinking the same thing. It was just a surprise. So yeah, and it's normal when you have that kind of upset for you to be like, okay, wait, hold on. Let me step back. But now I see how important this program is, because it is about awakening the divine feminine and really embracing that and using that in your business where, you know, like we were talking about all these former, you know, online businesses. It's a very masculine model. It's a very push model. Like not everyone is selling it very aggressively, but it's very much that woman in that article called it marketing on steroids, which I'm like, that is kind of what it is, right? It's like send email, you know, do your webinar, do this. And there is a different way to do it, and you can do it in a more allowing way where you use your intuition, which I think is what
had
you
12
have done.
years. Yes, I love that you're doing this kind of circle, because for years I did those, and at some point I may do another one again, but none of those were done with that traditional way. And people were like, how can you do this? And I said, well, I just made it up. I followed my intuition. And so I'm so glad that you're doing that and teaching more people to not only create that way, but to do the inner work and then the outer work. You know, both that's always been the element for me. It's both the inner work and the outer work. You can't have one without the other.
Yeah. And I have to thank you for inspiring me, because in all of the programs and coaches I've worked with, I felt like working with other groups of women was the most powerful aspect. And in all of the and marketing coaches I worked with, they all were like, what? Like, no, you do a rolling program and you have people in it. And I was like, no. Absolutely not. There is a bond that is created because I've seen it and I've been in it. So thank you, because in all of the things that I was taught in these fancy classes and like with coaches, no one taught a model like yours. And that was what I was really trying to replicate. I was like, if it was like this and a little longer, because I have to say, I always wish your programs were longer. Like the bond that is created with those people starting and stopping at the same time and moving through it together. It's like the community that's created is as important as the program itself, and the connections that you make with other people are, you know, lifelong connections.
When you rise together, that's what I love. You guys have become if you've been in a circle with me, you've become a close, intimate friend, not just a client. But I watch, I had lunch with two of our Dragonfly sisters the other day, and I watch how they continually support each other. And I think you're the only one that hasn't RSVP'd, like get on a plane and come.
Oh, I thought I did.
Well, we weren't sure if you were going to come or not, so hopefully you will. But like we support each other as girlfriends and as colleagues, and we rise together. And we're, even though you're a solopreneur and you might have various help from time to time, we're rising together, and we can reach across the sky or get on a plane and go see each other. And it's so supportive. And when I say supportive, I mean foundational. It is that foundation, because we don't have offices where we work. It's like working on a team without having to work on a team. And a lot of introverts don't want to work on a team, but we need our people. We still need our people. Yeah. So I'm excited for you.
Yeah.
I'm excited for you.
So do you want to talk a little bit? I want to just allow you to share your program as well, because it is really beautiful and I am a part of it. So you want to just quickly talk about that?
Yeah. So I just had I followed my intuition, and my intuition said, Allison, change everything. And I technically don't have the size list that somebody 12 years in the business would be, but you were really supportive, and like, Allison, your people are so loyal. And so I opened up a membership program, and I love that we have similar names. My LLC has been Soul-Full. So you have one L, you have to spell it the correct way. I spell it the wrong way. So mine is Soulful
your way.
Success. Yes, my way. I spell it Soulful Success. .info is the website, but it's Soulful Success. It's called school. I don't care about the name, but the Soulful Success part is, how do we create success in life and work that fills our soul? And I have a life track and I have a business track, and how it's different from most other membership programs is that I do everything live. There's some bonuses in there and everything is recorded, but I show up and teach the classes live. I show up and coach live. I interact on the Facebook group live. And I actually modeled this after the way I used to work as a productivity coach in the office. So I'd teach a couple classes, I'd have coaching sessions, and then I'd make rounds. And so there's a social aspect, there's a community aspect, and I have, and this is the big fun part. right? I'm used to being in those programs for $35,000. For $27,000, for $10,000. It's $188 a month for the business upgrade. And so you get all the life stuff, you get the business, because for me, I'm wanting to spend less money on coaching and put more towards my future. And I've changed my lifestyle to change things up. And so I'm wanting to give a place where a lot of people haven't been able to afford to be in those types of programs. And I'm wanting to provide both business life coaching, expertise, mastery, and community for a price that is less than your cable bill and your utility, your internet bill. And that way people don't have to worry about paying their fee. They can come and I love that people like you too, because you have been able to afford the very high end packages. And you're like, this is a no brainer. Even as a past client who is now a colleague and a peer of mine and who's technically outgrown my coaching, you're like, I always do better if I have a little taste of your life coaching in my life. And so you're in it, right? And And the other aspect I love that as we're growing is it's so fun to see each other lead in the group, right? Like people can learn from you and we can learn from, there's so many different businesses that are in there, and it's just really nice to have that community. So that you can find at, so to keep it from getting confused with Christine's, I'll just say coachwithallison.com is the easiest place to find it so that you don't get tripped up about how to spell soulful. But coachwithallison.com is the invitation page, and it's month to month. There's no long-term commitment. So you can try it out for a month. It's not for you, but trust me, it will be.
Yeah. And I love that you just pointed out, you changed your entire business, like completely. Yeah. Because you just felt like that was necessary. And I love that you took a chance and did that. And it seems like it's going really well.
It's so fun. I just wanted more of the, there's a lot of people. I was listening to something that was talking about the iPhone, and I have an iPhone, and the iPhone is a status symbol, and the new iPhone X is $1,000. And it's really the same technology as the phones that they're giving away. But why do we buy it? And we buy it because it's a luxury status thing. And so I'm used to being in those luxury things. And I don't blame somebody for not leveraging their house or going into debt to be in one of these programs. And I just wanted to make it more. I realized that the man or woman next door is just as powerful as that leader that's on the stage.
Absolutely.
If not more powerful. They're just quiet. They're under the radar. And so it's so fun because a lot of under the radar people who really are making an impact and who aren't walking away just because the money isn't there. By God, they're going to figure out how to give their heart and the money. So it's very fun to be able to make it more accessible for more people.
Yeah, I love that. And that's so unique that I don't see a lot of other people doing like a model like that. And so you're very cutting edge. I think that's what we're going to see more people doing that. Well, thank you. I don't want to go too long because we're over an hour, but thank you guys all for joining us and participating. It was wonderful to see all your comments, and we can comment on those later. And then Allison, you can type in your comments after, a link. Okay. I don't know how to do that here, but thank you so much for being part of this.
You're so welcome. Thank you for having me.
Awesome. Thank you, guys.
Bye, everybody.
Bye. Oh, now I have to figure out how to end it.